everyone, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. It's almost the end of the year and this year has gone by really, really fast. It was so busy. I know I complain about this in every video, but I taught 7 periods this year. So I gave up my prep period. I got paid a little bit extra, which helped. It just made things very stressful during the school day. So I taught 7 classes back to back to back to back to back every single day. And because I taught so many, I was also like covering, all different things. I taught 2 periods of 6th grade history, 4 periods of 7th grade English, and 1 period of 8th grade English. So every single day, by the time the school day was over, my brain was just like fried. And then I would have to go pick up my 2 kids and spend the rest of the day, with them, which is fun, but it's, doing homework, it's doing bath time, it's running to the store and then making dinner and cleaning up dinner and getting lunches for the next day and everything. My husband has a basketball business, and so that was very, very busy this year. He was away most of the time doing that in addition to his regular job. So it was just like professionally and personally a really busy year for our whole family this year. So I hardly ever got to post on YouTube. I noticed last week when I uploaded a video, it was only my 4th video of 2024. So I wish that I, had time to do more content, but I have a minute today and I thought I would just talk about the things that are working well for the end of the school year, particularly with my English classes. With my history classes, we still have to do ancient Rome. We have like 7 school days left to do all of ancient Rome. And some of those days I think we don't even have class. So I don't know how I'm gonna fit all that in. I gotta pace it out better next year. Oh, P.S. If you do teach ancient history, I've been like just trying to figure out the best format for this, but I'm gonna create like a pacing guide for ancient history that has like all of my favorite resources in it and like favorite YouTube videos and stuff like that, so that if you've never taught it before, because this happens to us, right? Sometimes like they're like, oh, by the way, next year you're gonna be teaching this, and you're like, what? And you don't really have time to plan and like research every single thing. So all the stuff that I like to use would be in there, but then you could also, switch things out and it would be editable. So you could change it up, add things that you liked, take off things that you didn't, and just kind of tailor it to your own curriculum. If your school does have curriculum, some just like don't even have any. You just have to like piece everything together yourself. So I will be working on that. But for today, we'll talk about the English classes that I have and what's been working. So if you teach I think this is probably true across the board. I was going to say at like a middle school or high school, but I'm sure it's true for elementary school as well. But the last couple weeks of school, maybe you've finished state testing and you have some kind of an assembly
that pops up, almost every day leading up to the end of the year. And maybe it's not for every period, it's just for some of your periods. And then some kids are going on a field trip if they're in this club or this class, but not all of your kids are. But then a whole class is going on a field trip on this day or whatever. Like things just get wild.
And so you're trying to plan things that are going to keep them engaged so they're not just like off the rails on those days when they are in class. But at the same time, it needs to be kind of flexible and it needs to be engaging enough that, they will pay attention in class, or maybe they've got to like make up a few things at home. I don't know. That's like the struggle for me at the end of the year, is just how every single day is different.
And some kids are out for web, and some kids are out for ed, and some kids are out for band, and some kids are here for this, and then I have an assembly only this period, but not this one.
Whatever, So anyways, the best thing that I have found for my 7th grade English classes is doing a podcast unit at the end of the year where we listen to like a narrative podcast. So we did The Unexplainable Disappearance of Mars Patel, and this, I would say like 7th grade is like maybe the top, 8th graders could probably do it too, but you could do it with like 5th and 6th grade. The characters in the story are 6th graders, so it'd be really good for 6th graders too, but kind of right in that like, upper elementary, kind of early middle school sweet spot. It's really good for them. I started it during state testing, which we did pretty late this year. And we would do state testing in the morning, and then we would have all of the regular classes after that. And they're like a little bit, their brains are kind of fried and I don't want to make them like read more or do a big writing project or whatever. But it's really nice to just like sit and listen to this fun podcast. So the resource that I created for them is Google Slides, because then I can link each episode. It's easy for me to grade in the end, but I didn't like having them on their device, like on their Chromebook while they were listening to the podcast, because then it's too easy to like get distracted and they would start opening other tabs and not paying attention. So what I did is I would just display the one slide. It's only ever one slide worth of questions per episode. So I would have those slides up. The questions were displayed, while we were listening to the episode, and I would just have them get out scratch paper. Like, it's the end of the year, let's use up some of this paper. Just get a pen or pencil, and they could, sometimes I don't like for them to like have their heads down on the table, but they could put their head down if they wanted, and they just needed to write down the notes so that they could fill in the slide afterward. And so I would always have a couple of comprehension questions, and then they just had to write down any who, what, when, where, why, and how did the episode end. So the who could be any character in that episode. Who do you want to write about? And just like tell us one thing about them. And then like a where, like what was one setting in this episode? Tell us what happened there. A when, maybe it's like before school or at detention, this happened. So just little things like that where it's just, what stood out to you? What do you remember from the episode, or what are you writing down? And it's 10 episodes long, so it took us like a little bit over a week. On some days we just did one episode, and other days we did two. So they would listen, they would take their notes, and then we'd take a little listening break. They would open up their Chromebooks, they would type in their answers for like 7 minutes or so, and then they would close their Chromebooks again, listen to another episode, and then fill in the answers again. And then so if it was one of those weird class periods where like, okay, just you guys have an assembly, they could listen to that one episode at home and do that for homework. Or like the other day, I had a 6th grade event, so I had to have a sub for my 7th grade classes. So they could do this independently. They could just listen to the episodes in their headphones and do this during class, but we didn't have to like listen to it all together as a group, although we did most of the time. It's kind of like a read aloud for middle school, but you have like sound effects and different actors, voice actors doing all of the characters. So it's really cool and really engaging. I'll link this resource down below for you. It was just like such an easy way for me to manage the end of the year, because at the same time that they're doing this, I'm dealing with, okay, all the things I need to gather from like state testing, and okay, I gotta get their grades in, and I gotta, grade their last couple things and take all the late work and all of those things. So it was useful for me to have this ready to go and teach that for the past couple of days. And then like, I wasn't really always able to kind of multitask, not as much as I wanted to, but potentially you kind of could. And the podcast itself it's kind of like sci-fi. It's a mystery. There's like a mysterious inventor. The kids go to this certain place and they kind of have like certain powers. They're kind of the misfit kids. So it's a really interesting podcast. It's a lot of fun. And then actually what I had them do on Friday, Friday, because we did finish the whole podcast. They were so excited about that. And I allowed them to count it as an audiobook, like that they read a book. So I require my kids to read 10 books per semester, and they keep track of it on this Google Drawing thing. I can link that down below as well. But they were allowed to count that as an audiobook, because really it's like they listened to a full audiobook across all of these episodes. So they liked that about it, I think. And then on Friday, we had kind of like one extra day where we were done with season 1, but they wanted to listen to season 2. So we listened to the first episode of season 2. They just kind of wrote a summary of it. And then I also had them write when they would listen to this, because we're going to run out of time at the end of the year. We can't actually listen all the way through season 2. But over the summer, where could you listen to this podcast? So we've been listening on like Chromebooks. Not all of them have phones, thank goodness. If they did have a phone, they could listen to it, like while they're taking a walk. But if it's on their Chromebook, they could listen to it while they are cleaning their room or doing laundry. Some of them said like in the car, they could like ask their parents to play it if they were driving somewhere. Or some said just like at night before they go to sleep, like they would play an episode like kind of as they're winding down. So I thought those were all really good plans for, potentially listening to this podcast over the summer. Listening is literacy, so this would like continue, their literacy throughout the summer, and then they can imagine themselves listening to it while they do something over the summer. And so I thought that was just like a really good little exercise before we end for the year, because it sets them up to continue to just like listen to this story. Season 2 is cool because it's more sci-fi, like it's kind of in space. I won't give too much away. I am going to create like the slides that I have for season 1 for season 2, because all my kids were super interested in listening to the next season, and I'm like, I don't have the whole thing ready for you. But they were like, if we have you in 8th grade, can we listen to season 2 in 8th grade and do that as an assignment? So I'll put together season 2, or that could be like an independent activity for you, if your class listened to season 1 as a group, and then like season 2 is an extension that some kids could do or whatever. So I'll put that together. But anyways, I was very impressed with the podcast itself, and then how into it my students were. I had a couple students who like didn't do much the whole year, and I was kind of tired by this point. I just was every day, like, okay, close your Chromebooks. I don't want to see your Chromebooks out. Get out your paper, borrow from a friend if you don't have paper, get out a pencil, and like, let's just do this. But some of those kids who hadn't done a whole lot of other assignments were just like, okay, they were ready, they were writing, they were paying attention, they were sitting up, they were listening, and like they were so into it. And I was like, ooh, okay, this was the way to get through to them. Glad I figured it out the last 3 weeks of school. But I didn't have to really sell this very much. They were all just kind of like into it on their own. Like at the very beginning, they were kind of like, oh, okay, we don't know what this is. But then as soon as we got into the first episode or 2, they were like, ooh, okay, all right, what's gonna happen now? So all of that is on Teachers Pay Teachers. Then with my 8th graders, I had them do something pretty different. I did make a video about this already. There's another video on it if you wanna see that. But I made that and I hadn't actually used it with my 8th graders yet. Now I've used it and it was so fun. Sometimes at the end of the year for teachers, like it needs to be fun for us too, because we are struggling as well. So my 8th graders have just finished their last textbook unit, and it was like pulling teeth to get them to do like the last couple of texts and assignments. Like state testing was over, they know the end of the year is coming, they have 8th grade-itis, and it was just like, I thought the texts were really great, but it was not fun trying to get them to do their work. So what we have now started, and we're doing this kind of until the end of the year. They're 8th graders, so they have even more events coming up actually. And so like, again, this is good because it's pretty flexible. If they miss a day, we can just catch up the next day. This just works really well for the type of schedule that we have at the end of the year. But this is 10 classic books that you should read. Like there's a TED Ed series that's like why you should read this, why you should read that. And so I put together 10 of them in chronological order. And so it starts with Don Quixote. Don Quixote sounds very boring. It's like not necessarily something that kids are like, ooh, I'm gonna read that over the summer. But these are 8th graders, they're going into high school. All they really care about right now is they're just thinking about high school. So we were talking about being prepared for the text that they might give you in high school or even college. Like some of these, they're not going to show up in high school, but like maybe college. So you're going to be required to maybe do some summer reading, or you get into 9th grade and you just like start with a novel, and they're going to be like a little higher level than what you read in middle school. And you're probably going to read some classic literature. And what I wish that I'd known in like high school and college is just like the context behind a lot of these stories. Like the second one that we talked about was Moby Dick. It was so boring to me the first time I read it. I didn't understand it at all. I hated it. But the videos that we watch and then we, answer questions along with them, explain like what he is doing, like what is Herman Melville doing, what types and styles of writing is he using, what is he commenting upon, what is happening in the historical context that they are like making fun of. Like a lot of times these really popular books like Don Quixote or whatever are satire. They're a response to something that's happening in culture at that moment, and this is actually making fun of everything. So if you understand that this is making fun of everyone, it's way more interesting. It's way cooler for kids to read because you're like, oh, okay, we're in on the joke. We get it. We're making fun of everybody right now. The other one we got to so far is Crime and Punishment. So we've been able to fit in like 3 per day. And then they kind of vote like, okay, out of these 3, which one would you be most